just want to do a quick review. The public beta branch is live. Patch notes just came out a few minutes ago. So yeah, name is Nate. You can also call me Nathan, but please never call me Nathaniel. And this is a Friends and Froze patch notes review and first look into the public beta branch. So let's check it out. See what is coming. I haven't reviewed this at all yet, other than the updates that they've been providing. So major new features starting at the top. New champion, Shardtail Queen from the Hellhorn clan. Her starting card is the Queen's Impling. We will check out all the new champions in just a few minutes once we dive into the public beta branch, and then we can check them out in more detail. New champion, Wildenton, whatever, from the Awoken clan. His starter card is Root Seeds. New champion, Solgard the Martyr from the Stygian Guard clan. His starter card is Foregone Power. New champion, Primordium from the Umbra clan. Its starter card is Plink. New champion, Little Fade from the Melting Remnant clan. Her starter card is Primitive Mold. New boss, Talos, the Architect at the Third Ring of Hell. She attacks before the Relentless phase, and her strikes give her benefits. Very interesting. Okay. New boss, Arcus, Darkness Incarnate at the Sixth Ring of Hell. He summons Dark Shards, a new type of unit that you must counterplay to survive. New boss, Seraph the Patient, a new Seraph variant that both attacks before Relentless phase and applies melee weakness, a new status effect that increases combat vulnerability. New artifacts. One new artifact per clan. Queen's Tail, Emblem of the Exiles, Stone Totem, Shadowbox, and Fade's First Blood. So we will be looking at those in just a few minutes. I think there's also maybe a description below. Personal records. Amazing. Best update. No, I'm kidding. I mean, this stuff is all awesome, but having personal records is fantastic. Anything to give us more insight into how we've been doing, our top scores, all that kind of stuff. Love it. New expert challenges. Great. We already completed the first 15, so being able to do the next 5 is going to be really fun. Excited about that. And we'll look at what those new challenges are once we get into the beta branch. General gameplay changes. Okay, now we can start talking about actual gameplay changes. New keyword, phased. Phased units cannot attack, cannot be targeted, and cannot take damage in any way. Sounds a lot like what is the mechanic in Hearthstone, where you play the unit, it sits on your I can't think of the word for it. It sits out there for a few turns, and then finally it becomes an actual unit. So my guess is that it does take up capacity. So you are losing capacity. But these phased units, I assume, once they have inherent effects, or I know the champion, for example, the Solgard the Martyr has this and becomes insane once activated, and it requires a certain amount of spells, I believe, in order for it to become activated. New keyword, attuned. I assume this is also true for enemy, that there are some enemies. In fact, I think it's Arcus or Talos. I think it's Arcus, that the Dark Shards are phased. They cannot be targeted or take damage. New keyword, attuned. Spells with attuned benefit from magic power at 5 times the rate as normal. The goal is to increase late game viability of certain cards. That's really cool. So certain cards are going to scale like mad, depending on whether they have this attuned keyword or not. You know what? I think I did not properly. I didn't. Monster Train. What a fool I am. And we're doing an analysis. Okay. Apologies. We're not doing Undertale. We're doing Monster Train. So where were we? We were on Attuned. So cool. I'll be excited to see which new cards have Attuned. It probably says below, but it seems really good. I mean, anytime you can increase the damage of certain cards, definitely will help with certain late game cards. New keyword, melee weakness. When applied, a unit takes more damage from normal combat. It does not decay unless the unit takes combat damage. What I'm not certain about is how much more damage. So this is what we'll look for when we jump into the public beta. Depending on how much more damage, that could be completely broken, or it could be perfectly reasonable, or anywhere in between, right? New trigger, Rally. Rally triggers when you play a unit on this floor. This trigger for sure happens with Shardtail Queen, who has this as one of her upgrade paths, has Rally. And the question will be if there's other cards that also have Rally, if there's enemy units that have Rally, that'll be interesting to see. Action Trigger, previously called On Turn, is now used on some new player units. Triggers on the unit's turn before it attacks. Interesting. So this is like the opposite of what is it called? It's the at the end of turn effect. What is that called? It's called Resolve. So this is similar to Resolve, except that it happens prior to attack rather than after attack. So it's like a faster Resolve trigger. When playing with a random primary or allied clan, you start your run from the... Oh, will be randomized! Fantastic. So as long as you put random as your primary or allied, then it maintains that on rerolls. That's fantastic for anytime you're doing like random runs. It'll be super, super nice. That also means that you could do a random... Anyway, we'll talk about stuff later. But yeah, that's really nice. I'm really glad they added this back in. Shieldstone damage shield stacks increase from 2 to 3. Okay. Shieldstone is... Why am I not thinking about Shieldstone? Damage shield stacks. Oh! Shieldstone is the... yeah, okay. So now you get 3 damage shield when you play the unit rather than 2. That makes a lot of sense. And I think that's a good change because 2 damage shield really isn't a lot. It's... Honestly, you could lose that on the first floor, and then it's gone. I mean, you still can with 3, but 3 is a little bit better at preserving a unit. I still think it's way underpowered. I think damage shield in general, unless you can get lots of stacks or have a way to consistently regenerate it, is pretty bad. Runestone stacks from 1 to 2, that's really good. And I don't think it hurts the combination with the Railhammer that much, because Railhammer's already like making this this particular upgrade insane. So I don't think it makes a huge difference going from... So you think it's 1 to 2, so it's doubling when you don't have Railhammer. When you do have Railhammer, it goes from 5 to 6. I don't think that upgrade is really that big of a deal. It's the 1 to 2 will make a huge difference. That means that it's equal with a Health Stone at 12 spells or 13 spells played, which is pretty reasonable. 25 spells played is not so reasonable. So I think that's a really good change. Remove the keyword enhance everywhere to increase clarity. By default, status effects never persist across death in battle. Stat changes always do. So this is just a clarity, a text change. So there's nowhere where it says enhance. Now it says apply everywhere. And status effects don't get maintained and stat changes do. That's pretty straightforward. I think one of the most important ones that people are not aware of is multi-strike and trample and sweep. Okay, not sweep because you can't apply sweep. But yeah, quick, multi-strike, and trample are lost on death. Hopefully now this clarifies that. Same with extending burnout. Applying extra burnout doesn't persist on death. Only the base burnout is maintained. Stackstone now increases Ember cost by 1 in addition to adding double stack. So one big nerf for this update. That is a really big change. Ooh, that is interesting. That nerfs the full Ember Drain package. That nerfs the Frostbite package. That nerfs Spikes package. I mean, not that much. Spikes wasn't such a big deal, but I would say Ember Drain package is like basically dead unless you have consistent Ember generators. And not dead. I mean, it's not dead. I still think you get a 3-cost Furnace tap with double stack is still good. It just means that you can't do that among, like, you can't get that and Permafrost. Very likely you get double stack and -1. But for Void Binding, that's like just kills Void Binding, because the whole thing with Void Binding is that you can make it 0 cost and double stacked. I think that's a massive nerf to the Ember Drain package. Frostbite package as well. You're going to have 4 cost Titan's Tooths. So unless you are really going all in on discard, that's going to be really brutal for those runs. I mean, that was one of the things, right? You could get the Conduit 3 Tethys, and then you have a free double stack Titan's Tooth. It's not that way anymore. It's a 1-cost Titan's Tooth. I think that's actually a pretty big... Oh, man, even Flash Freeze. Flash Freeze, getting a 2-cost Flash Freeze is going to be brutal. That also affects... that affects all of the spikes. So, double stacking Stygian... Or the Rail Spike, Stygian Rail Spike, Awoken Rail Spike... not Awoken. Awoken's not... Spike of the Hellhorn, Spike of the Stygian, Umbra doesn't get affected. The other spike, the Melting Remnant one, does get affected, but in a weird way. Remnant Spike gets affected, or Melting Spike? Can't remember, but it gets affected in a weird way. The Burnout gets doubled. And that's like the base, because you're not getting extra burnout based on the X cost. But the enhance gets nerfed. I don't know. That one's really weird. But yeah, like this is the biggest hit. Number 1 hit is the Ember Drain package. Number 2 is the Frostbite package. Both of them get pretty brutally nerfed. Oh, and all of honestly, Stygian Guard just gets blasted, because almost everything in Stygian Guard you want to double stack. You want to double stack the Frostbite. So you got Frostbite. You want to double stack the Daze. You want to double stack the Sap, and all of that gets nerfed heavily. Actually, the nerf continues. It really hurts. It hurts. Yeah, it hurts hard on now your Wildwood, or your your, what is it called? Wildwood Sap now costs 2. Your Awake now costs 4. Your all of your armor double stacking, all your rage double stacking. Man, that is a brutal across the board nerf. I think the only one that doesn't get The only one that doesn't get crazy affected is Burnout, because I don't really prioritize double stacking the Burnout. That's a brutal nerf. That's a brutal nerf. That completely changes the game for speedrunning, changes the game for a lot of the daily challenge type stuff you do, changes the game for Covenant 25, changes the game for the expert challenges. Like that's a brutal nerf. They did say it's the only one, but wow, that is it definitely shakes things up. It's going to make everything a lot more difficult, for sure. Okay, Hope for Peace now only affects spells to avoid confusion with Monster Rail Spike. Okay, that's whatever. All right, Hellhorn gameplay challenges. Impressive is now attuned, so that means it benefits ×5 from magic power. So that means the base magic power, you're adding 10. That would add 50 damage to Impressive as a base. Which is pretty good. It's not bad. Going into Ritual of Battle, that needed to be increased. If you are going to nerf the double stack, you need to buff the base here. Absolutely, that's the right call. Sting damage increased to 10. Honestly, I think Awoken just got gutted. Not gutted, but like that the double stack on Awoken is like a core part of keeping your tanks alive, and that's a pretty brutal nerf to them. I don't think the Sting is going to make up for that. I think this is going to be a more difficult in general clan to play with the nerf to double stack. Not like Dead in the Water, but it definitely will be more difficult to play. All right, let's go into Umbra. Feast now only triggers eating if there's a unit that can feed. Okay, I mean, it's whatever. There was this weird interaction where you could feast a room that only had morsels and they would just like die. But whatever. New keyword, buffet. Units with buffet can be eaten more than once. Currently, only Primordium has buffet. Yeah, we knew that. So, so Primordium can be eaten multiple times, and it has a stack. And once that stack reaches 0, then he's gone. Memento Mori was changed from rare to uncommon, and Intent on Death was changed from uncommon to rare. That does make a lot of sense. It's a nerf to Bounty Stalker, and I think that's a good way to nerf Bounty Stalker, rather than like directly attacking his base stats or his growth. I think making it more difficult to get Intent on Death makes sense. It also is a slight nerf to Legion of Wax for the same reason. Memento Mori switching to uncommon is fine, honestly. I think this is actually a good change. Paraffin Enforcer health was increased. Interesting. I don't know that Paraffin Enforcer needed a buff, but we'll take it. I mean, Paraffin Enforcer already is really good. If you've seen my guide, the Enforced Burn Bright build as him as a core component of that build, so making him stronger is going to definitely be a buff to that build. In fact, it's one of the builds that so far has not gotten touched at all by any of these changes. Mortal Entrapment days increased to 3 and is now attuned. Okay. I mean, it makes sense. Mortal Entrapment's been kind of in a weird spot. It's a really high cost card in a clan that doesn't really do a lot of high cost stuff. So I think that makes a lot of sense to increase the days, increase the potential damage output. I don't know that it's going to get played anymore, but I think it's more interesting to get it now. I think the real edge cases are going to be like Seraphite getting one more turn out of the days, or units going to the top floor have one more turn getting hit by the pyre, and that could make a difference. Making him as a tank, I mean, maybe. I don't think 10 damage turns him from not a tank to being a tank. I think the major buff here is he's even less likely to get killed by sweep or spikes. And oftentimes you're going to want to put multi-strike on him. So getting multi-strike on him and then having spikes means that he'll survive a little bit better. I don't want to necessarily throw any ideas out here. But along with this change, I would not be surprised, and I would even not be honestly that upset if multi-strike increased the Ember cost of units by 1. I think that would actually have been my preferred way to nerf some of the other units. I wonder if they'll do that in the future. But I could definitely see that nerf coming through. I think it's along the same lines, and I think unit costs are fairly low across the board. And multi-strike being such an immensely powerful upgrade compared to all the others. And large stone, large stone, you already have a nerf, right? You get all these basic stats, and then in return you have extra capacity constraint. I can see multi-strike being Ember constraint. Yep, 7 cost Shadow Siege. I think that would be actually fine. It doesn't affect the Sketches build, but it would affect, in general, Shadow Siege builds. It would affect Consumer of Crowns. Now, Consumer of Crowns, you need more imps, or at least more consistent imps to play him out. Demon Fiend, his number 1 upgrade is multi-strike. Now, Demon Fiend costs 5. Alpha Fiend costing 3. I honestly, like, even Bounty Stalker costing 2. I think that would actually be an okay nerf. But I don't know. We'll see if they end up doing it or not. If they did that, I would say counterpoint. If they did that, then they should add a -1 cost to units as an upgrade, in my opinion. So then you could get multi-strike and minus the cost, or you could even minus the cost 2 of a unit as upgrades. And you could have a 4 cost Shadow Siege. I'm going to be going into the beta in just a few minutes. We'll see how everything looks in the beta. All right, other changes and bug fixes. New audio tracks. I did hear about that. I listened to the one for Talos. Was really cool. So I'm excited for the new music. Text. Clarify that days status blocks various triggers. That's really good because I think not everyone was aware, for example, that resolve triggers are not... resolve triggers are affected by days. Change the gambling event to make it clear it is pyre health that is on the line. Okay. Engine upgrade. Maybe that helps me. You never know, right? Upgrading to a newer engine, maybe that helps my speedruns. We'll see. UI, added ability to switch between Exile and normal champions for both primary and allied clans. Okay, we'll see how that UI looks. UI, show which ring 3 and ring 6 bosses you will face. Currently, they mentioned that everything in the beta branch is on the new bosses. So you will always face Talos, you will always face Arcus, and you will always face Seraph the Patient in the public beta right now. Or maybe Seraph's wrong, but the other two you always face right now, so that they can test it. Added wave counter to battle. That's awesome. Fantastic. Okay, this is a really, really good change. Add an easier way to cancel mutators and expert challenges with one click. Also, I mean, fine. But this is, I mean, not huge, but it's really, really good. I'm glad they added this, because I often have a hard time calculating, especially on Seraph and Fel fights, what turn I'm on. Increase the size of card subtype to improve readability. It's good. And reorder the logbook tabs to make more logical sense with champion upgrade. Okay, that's fine. UI, don't highlight any part of the champion upgrades in the logbook, so the whole thing's easier to read. That's actually really good. Fixed keyword, tooltips, fixed determinants, ensure pyre health auto always plays. Fixed issue where discard pile count would be wrong. Fixed the rare bug with train steward card into display. Soft lock. Related to trials that give out an artifact, being dependent on which path you chose prior. Fixed a text issue where an armor displayed was different. Okay. Spells cards that purge or duplicate on kill now trigger correctly when they kill bosses. Oh, okay. That makes sense. I didn't know that was a bug, but glad they fixed it. Unfocus the hand if you open deck. I don't know what that means. A few spells didn't work with the volatile spells mutator were fixed. For example, restoration detonation. Okay. Cool. So those are the patch notes. I think the major highlights, a lot of really good UI changes that I'm excited to see. So you have wave counter. You have all the stats up here. All the stats. You have the random rolls here. Where is it? Here. Random is now continued to be randomized on rerolls. Thrilled about that. Nerfs. I mean, we talked about this in detail. I can't emphasize enough. This is a massive nerf to a lot of builds. So you have to be much more careful about when you take double stack or stack stone as it is now. Minor buffs in some places. A lot of them. Oh, I didn't miss all these. Stygian guards. Okay. Attuned on Titan's Gratitude, attuned on Ice and Pyre, attuned on Crypt Builder. That's all great. So that means that those upgrades now count for 50 rather than for 10, or 100 rather than 20, which is really cool. I think that makes a lot of sense. And then Shard, which we'll get to when we get into the thing. These stones are actually pretty good upgrades. This one's, I would say, very, very minimal. This one's actually really good. Runestone should be an option a lot of the time now. If you have at least 2 or 3 spells per turn, it's going to be better than a Health Stone. And if you're doing more than that, if you're doing like 4 or 5 spells per turn, this is a auto pick over Health Stone. Yeah. So let's then jump into the public beta and take a look ourselves and see what the changes are. Okay. Where are you, Monster Train? There you are. Let's turn up the sound a bit and turn it up on my end as well. Let's start with logbook. Okay, so you now see both champion images. Oh, and you do get the UI added double crown. So now I have to beat it freaking 20 more times. 20 more times I have to beat this freaking game. Where's my stats? Oh, yeah. Oh, look at this. Look at this. This is so nice. All right, let's look. Best records. 515 cards drawn. 40,000 damage dealt. 2,790 highest damage dealt by a spell. You know, we could do a challenge, Narninian. We could do a challenge where it's who can get the highest damage dealt by a spell by a deadline, and just say you have 1 week. Whoever has the highest number here at the end of 1 week wins. Oh, let's look at the 5 new expert challenges. Actually, that would be really interesting. So we have new expert challenges. We have Blighted Existence. Sorry. Dead Weights, Junked Up, Magic Hand. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Have you seen this? This is insane. That's awful. All right, stealthiest bosses. Double stack. Oh my gosh. 5 stealth doubled. So base 10. If you get the stealth boss, base 26 stealth. Largest lads. Everything is big and getting drowned down. You can also upgrade them even more. Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. Homework. It's just Covenant 25 with no combat previews. That's the whole challenge. That's hilarious. And Steward stack. Powered up stewards that you can't cast. Oh man. All right. So, we have now unlocked visually all the cards, not actually beaten the game with them, but we've unlocked them visually. So let's go through all of the new cards. So starting with the Queen's Impling. Summon, deal 10 damage to the front enemy unit. Very, very interesting. Honestly, this seems better by default than Frozen Lance. For a couple of reasons. So one, it is not blocked by Spell Shield. So that 10 damage will hit no matter what. 2, it then acts as a blocker. 3, it counts towards your imp count for Consumer of Crowns. And my thinking is Consumer of Crowns is going to be super easy because you start with 4 Queen's Imps. Is it 3 or 4? I think it's 4. If you're on Covenant 25, you start with 4 Queen's Implings. If you're on Covenant 1, it's 3. Queen's Implings, that's already enough imps to get you to Consumer of Crowns, which is interesting. Is it 5? I thought it was 5 on Covenant 0, and then it goes to 3 on Covenant 1, and then it goes to 4 throughout Covenant 25. Is it 5 by the end again? You're probably right. You've been playing more stuff. Yeah, it's 5 at Covenant 0, 5 at Covenant 25. Okay. Really interesting. I think this is going to be a really strong contender. The main thing is its interaction with the Queen, which we'll talk about in just a minute. Let's go to spells. We now have Root Seed. Root Seed is also very interesting. I almost think like the draw is the better part of the card than the increase of damage, but this is really, really good with the Animus cards because they especially Animus of Will, that's 6 damage per application. Anything with multi-strike is going to love the extra damage. And then the draw. Not having restores is going to be really tough, though. I think the restores are a pretty strong staple. Like, you get a Thorned Hollow. How do you stack a Thorned Hollow? How do you stack an Awoken Hollow? I think that's where you're going to have a lot of problems. You may need to pivot towards more the Animus, the sweep units. And the sweep units also take benefit from Root Seeds because they apply to all of the units in that floor. So I think there's a lot of good applications here, but it is going to be a nerf to the hollows for sure. Foregone Power. Apply 6 Frostbite to the front enemy unit. Discard a card at random. So with the new Relic, this is really good. That's every time you play this, you gain an Ember and you discard a card at random. Means offering cards have a buff when you're playing Foregone Power. The randomness of it is actually pretty easy to get around because it's a 0 cost. This is a good target to double stack because Frostbite for 12, but it's only to the front enemy unit. That's actually problematic because you often don't want to apply Frostbite to the front enemy unit. You want to apply it to the back unit to kill it. So that could be an issue. But if you think about it, if you have front enemy tanks and you play like 2 of these to the front enemy tank compared to a Frozen Lance, this is 6 damage. This is 6, 11, 15 damage without any upgrades. And it gets through Spell Shield because status effects are not blocked by Spell Shield. And it's a 0 cost. Very, very interesting card. Off like the cuff, I can't say whether it's strong or weak. I definitely think it's different and interesting, but it might be difficult to play around. We'll have to see. Plink. Deal 1 damage to a random enemy unit twice. On Slay, add a common or uncommon morsel. So this is the best starting card to add spell damage to. It's better than Umbra Assault. No, it's not. Because it's random. It is sometimes better than Umbra Assault. Most times it's not. I think it's very interesting. I think it's a really good card to add 10 extra damage to because 11 damage twice is really, really strong, even if it is random. And honestly, you play it more for the damage than you do for the slay, but when the slay happens, you're always happy. Very, very interesting card. Very curious to see how this works out. And last, we have Primitive Mold. Reform a random unit. Seems good. Not a whole lot to say other than if your units aren't dying, it's absolutely worthless. And it's a dead draw on turn 1, which is a little bit irritating. Yeah, I think that's kind of problem. It's a dead weight on turn 1. No, it's fair. I mean, you need a way to keep bringing back units, and having a guaranteed reform. That's why either taking Endless Little Fade or we can get into it in a little bit. That might be the better speed run. The randomness also makes this card faster to play than the other reform cards. But having a dead draw on turn 1 is not really very fun. So we'll have to see how often that happens and how frustrating that is. Let's get into champions. So we have 3 different paths. You have the Resolve, add a Queen's Impling to your hand. Later this becomes a this becomes a Rage Imp. And then it becomes a Rage Imp and an Armor Imp together. So 3rd upgrade is like really, really strong. But you need the space for them. And to your point, Narninian, how are you going to get rid of your imps? You have no targeted damage unless you take Branding Right or what's it called? The piercing 5 damage spell. I can't think what it's called right now. My brain's a little fried. Sorry. That's going to be the issue. But putting the imps up front to tank is going to be really good. Oh yeah. And it's actually fantastic if you get Impressive. Because impressive scales based on the number of imps you have. You're going to get 2 more imps. That card's going to be nuts. It's 25 per imp. So that's 50 extra damage per turn. Scaling. That's crazy. Shard Queen. Rally. Also really good. You want to put her in the back and then put chumps in front of her to increase her damage. I think it ends at Rally 20. So extra 20 damage per turn is like, or extra 20 damage per unit you're putting in front of her is insane. So as long as you're able to kill and replace units in front. Honestly, can you imagine her with, what is it? What's the remnant tomb unit that spawns drafts? Can you imagine that? Oh, even better. Can you imagine the Shardtail Queen on a floor where you have Morsel Master and you're playing up to all those morsels, you feast them all, and then you play more morsels? She would get absolutely nuts if morsels, I think morsels are considered rallyable cards. That's going to be insane. you can you could get really nuts here with the amount of damage she can do, even in a turn 1, because there are some infinites. All those infinites. Think about those. Think about the imp infinites. You sack the imp, you draw the imp, you play the imp, you sack the imp, you play. Like, you could get infinite scaling with the Shardtail Queen, and that would be much faster than some of the other infinites. That's actually really interesting to think about. This seems really strong. I have to see in practice how strong it actually is, but it seems potentially overpowered. Even early game, it's very easy to get with those imps. You put 4 in front of her. That's already 25-20. That's a pretty strong early game unit. Interesting. And then Shardtail Queen. Action, kill all imp units, deal 20 damage per imp to enemy units. I think this is going to be the weakest one in my opinion, or at least the one that requires the most support. If you get imp in a box, if you get the Impsicle, it's insane. If you don't have those, or you don't have an endless, I guess you could also get an endless imp, right? You play an endless imp, it dies end of turn, you play it again, dies, plays again, and so on and so on and so on and so on. There it could be also really, really good. But I think it's the weirdest one to try to work around. Okay, so then let's go to Wildenton. Add sting spells, and every incant gives you more stuff. I think this is okay. I definitely think you need sting support, but having an incant, and then I think it ends up at +4 damage per incant, is pretty dang good. I mean, you think about right now, we are thrilled to have a Siren of the Sea that incants for +1. Imagine if Siren of the Sea incanted for +4. I mean, that's a Siren, that's a nameless Siren gaining the 2 rage, but it's permanent. It's an enhance, it's not a rage, so it can't be cleansed. That could be really, really strong. And the fact that you start the game with 3 incants in hand for free could be really, really strong. I would imagine this on the same level as like Burnout Rector Flicker and Monstrous Penumbra, in terms of just like really, really good early game, falls off a little bit late game. But we'll see. Maybe it's the opposite. Maybe it's more like Harvest, where it's really weak early game and then goes crazy late game. Wildenton here is really good. Everything becomes quick, so it's fantastic with Animus of Will or with your sweep units. You put this in back, you put one of your sweep units in front, it picks off all the backliners, then he hits the front liner. Like, that just seems really, really good. And then you're going to get all the +1s and draws. I think that's a really good setup here. And then sweep and root. This one's also a little bit weird to me. I don't think root is that great, but if you had if you had something like Thorned Hollow with a Weldon Tin behind it, and you got enough support with healing, like you got Unleash the Wildwood, or you got an Awake, you could survive all the damage, and then they'd never reach your pyre. So as long as Wild Intent stays alive, no units will ever reach the pyre, which is interesting. It's awful against bosses, right? That's the only issue. Is that bosses can't be rooted. So I don't know. I don't know how to gauge this one yet. This one seems really strong. This one seems really strong. I can't gauge the middle one. And out of these two, I think Wild Intent has the upper hand in terms of consistency, because quick is always good. And having quick on your like other units is usually good as well. Incant depends on how easy it is to scale. It feels like it'd be pretty easy to scale, but we'll have to see. Okay. Tethys, or not Tethys, Soulguard. All of them have the shard, so they gain shards, and then when they have all their shards, then they have a different effect. This one is, it's almost like a permanent glacial seal, right? You put it in the back. You have a tank up front. I don't know. The unnamed guard, or the I don't know, any tank you put in front. A guard of the unnamed, or yeah. And then you just play this. You incant like nuts. And you get all these shards. And if you have like 20 shards, that's 20 frostbite per turn to all enemy units. So that could scale immensely high. Pretty bad against Seraph the Chaste, but I guess everything else could be really good. Interesting. Deal 3 damage per shard to the front enemy unit. Triggers on this unit's turn before it attacks. Is that a better restore? Is that a better rejuvenation awoken unit? Isn't that better? Base is 40 rejuvenation, or 40 damage per restore trigger. 40 restore, and so you don't need to have regen. That's the first thing. You don't need to have regen. As long as you're playing spells, it's stacking. And then during Relentless phase, it's going to do that damage every single turn before it attacks. So it takes place before it attacks rather than, but it'll still take place after the enemy attacks. So giving it quick still is a benefit, because we need to test the interaction, but I think with quick, this would be the first action that takes place. How many incants would you need? You'd need at least 40 spells to equal the rejuvenation trigger on Explosive Sentient. How often are you getting 10 spells at the beginning? Is pretty straightforward. You can get 10 spells in the first few combat rounds. How likely is it that you get 40 during a Seraph fight? Hard to gauge. And the other thing too is with the restoration, you can do it ahead, right? Like you can stack it in advance. And the damage does scale per, I think it's 3, 6, 12. So 12 damage, actually then it's much, much better, right? Oh yeah, 'cause it's not 1 damage per shard. If you have 10 shards, 10 spells, that's 30 damage. I think that could get really strong. But it's much better on Relentless phase. It's much, much worse on unit phases. And you want quick on her. Or Soulguard a boy? I can't tell. It's non-gendered. And then this one is, I think it's pretty easy to get 4 stacks, 4 shards, and then you just have a really strong unit. This is probably the closest one, actually. I lied. This is the closest to a Burn Bright or Monstrous Penumbra in the deck so far. Just a big, beefy unit, and I'm pretty sure the third phase of it is like really, really beefy. Big, beefy unit with very little capacity. Seems good. All right, Primordium. Primordium, this is one of the ones I'm most interested in because in all 3 it's the same. You get the damage, health, and all... Oh, no, this one includes all status effects. So what's really great about this one is your Ember Drain package, right? Ember Drain package is pretty garbage. It's not on here because if you have a... Let's say you have a... I don't know. In front, you have a Gorge unit, right? And then you put Void Bindings on your Primordium. All of the status effects get added every time he eats him, so up to 3 times. You could have that same Furnace Tap effect 3 times. Double stacked Furnace Tap on Primordium equals 6 times multi-strike on your front enemy unit, or on your front unit that's gorging him, or on your unit that's gorging him. That's insane. And that's after 3 turns. So could be really strong. Could be really difficult, but that's really what you're going for there, is that you want to buff Primordium like crazy and then put a Gorge unit in front to take advantage of all of those buffs. This one just has more base stats. This one can be eaten multiple times. So these need to be enhanced. This one can have any triggers on. I think Superfood's probably the best one in general. That's what I'm doing. You're showing up in the middle of my thoughts. If you missed the earlier part, I am going to put up the video probably, if I'm feeling really motivated, I'll do it tonight, but it'll probably end up being tomorrow, put up the video. But in general, I don't know if you've seen the patch notes, massive nerf coming. Huge nerf to double stack, which is going to affect every single clan. Outside of that, I really like the new stuff. I think it's really interesting, and I'm excited to play around with it. I think some of them are going to be really difficult to assess, but so far I'm really liking the changes. And Little Fade, this is the other one that I would say I'm most excited about Primordium in general, and sorting out how to get the most benefit out of buffs on these guys. But I'm also really excited about Little Fade. I think Little Fade has the potential to be nuts, especially Eternal Flame. Eternal Flame, for me, is, does this work with certain relics, as I hope it does? And if it does, it's going to be nuts, especially Volatile Gauge, because this means you can scale Little Fade infinitely. And the build that I would do here is you get -1 on a... what the heck is the card called? Crushing Demise. So you get Crushing Demise, -1, Holdover, and you get either Ember Generation or you get Volatile Gauge. And you kill intentionally Little Fade every turn, bring it back with insane stats, and either you have the Ember to play it, that's one way, or you have Volatile Gauge, and I hope that Volatile Gauge keeps this randomized between 1 and 3. Then no matter how much it scales, you can always play it. After 5 turns, remember this is level 1. After 5 turns of level 1, this is a 125-26. Really insane. This Little Fade is also really good. It's probably best paired with Awoken, so you can take advantage of the +1 damage already, and adding spikes already, and getting spikes multipliers. Biggest issue is the health, but you can reform him over and over again. So you could pair him. Actually, this would be really good. Think about this: you get him, you get the artifact. Exploding Candle. This is what we have to see. If Exploding Candle works with Little Fade, then any units that die to the Exploding Candle increases spikes and slay triggers. You reform him because you get random reform as your base card. He could also scale out of control. Similar here, apply every time he dies. Like, all of these are really built around the reform, which is kind of cool. Which is something that I wanted, because a lot of the best burnout builds are like not reform builds. So I like that this is really reinforcing reform. Except for you. You're just insane. So, that is my overall... Oh, no, it's not. I still have relics. So we got 5 new relics. Let's start with Hellhorned. New relic is Queen's Tail. When you summon your first imp each turn, gain 1 ember and draw 1. Wow. That is really good. Yeah, that's really, really good. Nothing really much to say about that. That's really, really, really strong. You get, yeah, exactly. You get Impsicle and Queen's Tail, and that's a guaranteed 1 draw, 1 ember every turn. Or I guess you could say a free imp. It's a free imp every turn. That also draws you a card. Really good. Emblem of the Exiles. This might be one of the most powerful relics in the game. That is plus 5 health to every front unit on every floor. And it's not heal. It is just add 5 health. I don't know. Seems pretty good to me. That is the same as the trigger on Steelworker. So you get Steelworker with that relic. That's plus 10 per turn, without healing. Stone Totem. When a card is discarded before the end of your turn, gain 1. Just good. Again, especially if you're playing Exile, because you get a discard card by default. So it's a 0 cost that gains Ember. Seems also pretty good. Shadowbox. When you play your 20th morsel unit of the battle, deal... What the hell is this? When you play your 20th morsel unit of the battle, deal 150 damage to all enemy units on all floors. What? What is this relic? Yeah. Yeah. I think that's actually not good. The fact that you'd have to specifically not play morsels because it's a bad time. Like, I don't know. That seems really weird. You'd have to try to time it for when the boss shows up. That could really screw you over if you're playing against the chicken boss and it kills the backline unit and now your chicken boss is doing extra damage. I don't know. I don't think it's good. If it was every 20 morsels, that would maybe be better. I would hope that they would change it to that. Every 20 morsels, deal 150 damage. I could see that. I think Amateur Gamer, I think you're right. I think you do every 20th 100 damage would be better. That is just a bizarre relic. All right, last one. Friendly units gain Rage 3 whenever they lose a stack of Burnout. What? Well, Burn Bright, Reinforced Burn Bright just got way better. If you're not playing a Burnout deck, it's garbage. But I mean, that's a lot of decks are that way, right? Like if you're not playing a Morsel deck and you get Morsel ones, it's not good. Is this in general good? I mean, with Burn Bright, it's just good. Like it's just a solid buff, which is weird to me because I feel like Burn Bright doesn't need any more buffs. I think it's one of still one of the strongest champion upgrade paths in the game. I mean, it's good. Like, I don't know. It's good, but it's weird. Your dregs then have 15 damage before they die, and that might be relevant. Your Lady of the Reformed just continues to get stronger every turn. Really, really interesting. I'm really excited to try all this. I think there's a lot of potential here. As I said, I'm probably, out of everything, single most upgrade path I'm most excited about is Eternal Flame, to play around with this Extinguish Endless setup here. I'm also really excited about all these ones. These are probably my two favorite, but these are also very interesting. So I'm excited. We'll start, what we'll do is, we'll do the daily challenge as part of the Monster Train Daily Show. Then I will do the Monster Train League, and then I will switch over to Beta Branch, and we'll play around in the Beta Branch. Start doing Covenant 25 runs and see if we can sort out how to make these different champion paths work, how to make the new cards work, relics, play around with the bosses. And yeah, we'll see how that goes. But with that, that's my review. But let's end. So yeah, that's my impressions. I think the nerfs are really insane to double stack. That's going to hurt every single clan. I think that the new champions are really interesting. I'm excited to try them out. I think the new relics, apart from that weird Umbra one, are all very, very strong. New starting cards are very interesting. I wouldn't say any of them are like particularly out there. I think all of them have some trade-offs. Yeah, so I think this is a really good update. Far less like minor balance changes, just the one massive one. So we'll see how that shakes out. So with that, I know short stream, just wanted to do a quick impressions and review. Hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll jump into it tomorrow morning for me, or tomorrow night for US folks in the Monster Train Daily Show. We'll jump back into it and actually play around and play some runs. So thanks for watching, and I will see you guys in the next stream/video.